Hey there, Sovereigns. Monica Grace from cardreadingqueen.com here. Today I wanted to do two videos, actually. One is going to be called The 5 Things I Had to Heal to Manifest My Child into the World. And the second one is going to be called I Had the Physical Proof of My Child, but didn't believe it until I surrendered this. So a little bit of excitement there. The reason I wanted to do these videos is because a lot of people on the twin soul journey are wondering, how can I manifest, or how can I bring in my twin soul faster? Why is my twin soul not coming in faster? And for me, this experience, basically I was trying to get pregnant for about 3 years, maybe 4 years before I finally did. And now, as I'm recording this, it's 2020. My journey started in 2016, so it was a while ago, and I currently have a 6-month-old. So it's been a long journey, but I wanted to talk about like how I manifested my child eventually, and I think that the things I'm going to talk about are going to be very relevant and helpful to you on your twin soul journey. So I will explain that as I go. So this video is going to be the 5 things I had to heal to manifest my child into the world. And then if you want the second one, you can go to my YouTube channel. It's cardreadingqueen.com/YouTube, or you can go to my podcast, which is called Your Twin Soul Journey, and it's kind of available everywhere. Also on my blog, there's, I post my transcripts of my videos and my podcast and everything. So definitely check it out there. But this is a 2-parter, and hopefully it'll be very enlightening to you. So the first thing is the first thing I had to do to manifest my child into the world. This was back in 2016, and it was that I had to heal my workaholism and had to create a work-life balance. So that's very specific to my child. The broader picture is that I had to create space for the thing and the person that I wanted to manifest. So what was happening here is that I was working pretty much obsessively for years and years, from about, I think, like 2010, maybe even earlier, to like 2014, 2015, into 2016. And I was like, when I say obsessively, it was like I worked, probably 14 to 16 hours a day, every single day. Like every moment I was awake, I was thinking about my work. And my work was online primarily. So I did have jobs during that time. I did have freelance work during that time. And then I eventually went full-time with my writing business. And so I was a workaholic. So what happened is I knew I needed to heal it because I was having this was bringing up all sorts of stuff, all sorts of triggers for me around motherhood, because I thought, well, I don't really have time for this. I'm going to have a child and I'm not going to have time to run my business anymore. And that's like the end of my life. Like I was very dramatic about it. Obviously now I am still running a business, actually multiple businesses, and I have a 6-month-old who I am breastfeeding and with like all the time. So yeah, obviously it's possible to do this, but I had a lot of blocks against this at first. So what happened with that was, in order to heal that workaholism, I worked with a coach named Nisha Moodley, who's amazing. And I was in a year-long program with her, but she said something to me that was really helpful to me. And it was, I was talking to her about like my team that I had at the time, which I don't have a team anymore. But I was talking to her about this and saying like how anxious I was. Like, are they going to do what I need done? And like, is this going to work? I'm going on a trip for like 2 weeks. And she was like, Monica, like, you seem to have support, but you don't seem to feel supported. There's a big difference. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's true. And I realized that I was trying to, it's like I was trying to use my business to fill a need for myself, which was that I didn't think I could support myself, not only financially, which I was supporting myself financially at that point, but it was like, it was a realization that support doesn't come from me, breaking out the cash and like getting like all these people to help me with my work. Support comes from within. And so that's something, as it relates to the twin soul journey, I think it's pretty much the same thing. Like if you are feeling, especially feeling unsupported by your twin soul or feeling like unsupported on your journey, you have to know that that support comes from within. So the two lessons here, in my opinion, clearing the space for the thing you want, and then, doing that in order to support yourself. So the second thing that happened that I had to fix or heal, I guess is the better word, was that I had a lot of karmic relationship issues with my spouse. And so I've been with my spouse since about 2011, like toward the end of 2011. And this is my second marriage. So I was married before, to basically a karmic twin, if you are familiar with that term. If not, I'll kind of explain it. So what happened was I was married to my karmic twin. It didn't work out. It was a very toxic relationship. I was unhappy, and I wasn't able to leave it still because I had a lot of like guilt about leaving it, because I was like, oh, like I was raised to like, we didn't believe in divorce in my family, and I was just raised to think like, wow, like the very worst thing that can happen to you is that you get divorced. Like that was my belief. So I was really hesitant to divorce this person, even though it was not a good relationship, and it was very toxic and abusive. Probably on both ends, like definitely on his end. I think he's a little bit, kind of an abusive person. I wasn't experiencing abuse in my relationship before him. So I don't know. I also had some abusive patterns though. So I want to admit that and be like honest about that. So it was an abusive relationship, and I wasn't able to leave it for myself. But then, we're 4 or 5 years into the marriage, and I realized, like, he started talking about kids, and I realized, like, okay, this is my boundary on this, because it's one thing for me to put up with kind of this toxic environment and this physical abuse and like name calling and all this stuff, but I'm not going to bring my children into that, my unborn children into that. So I decided that I needed to get out of the relationship before I had kids. So that's what I did. And then in my next relationship, I was very cautious to know that I did not want to repeat that. So my husband now, he also had a karmic twin it was like a very similar situation. And that person, he also ended that relationship. And then, he had a couple years before he and I met. But we still both had the wounding from those past relationships. So we had healed a lot of the wounding in those relationships by leaving those relationships. And then when we came together, though, we still had some of those patterns that we would fall into. So I talk a lot about how, just in general, how toxicity is a pattern, not a person. So we, the situation for me with my ex-husband, I feel like he really didn't genuinely have any of my interests at heart. With my current husband, I feel like we were both good people, but we had just learned these bad behaviors and patterns, and we got sucked into them every once in a while. So it was a very different energy where, and I think it's really important to be able to discern, like, is this a toxic person, or is this a toxic pattern between the two of you? So for me, I felt that the first relationship was a toxic person. The second relationship was a toxic pattern of us triggering each other. So anyway, after my first experience, I decided like, I am not going to have kids with somebody that I cannot fully 100% trust. That we are going to create a very safe environment for this child, or for these children that come in. Like, we're not going to have well, definitely not any violence, obviously, no physical violence, but also, no like stomping around, no slamming doors, no like hitting things. So that's all kind of the physical side as well. But then also like no name calling, no like yelling at each other. And so I had like this long list of things, because I was like, I need to have a safe environment for these children if we're going to have them. And we didn't have that. So we had kind of continued some of our patterns from these past relationships. And I was really putting my foot down, like, I can't have kids until this is resolved. And my husband didn't really understand that. He was like, oh, we'll totally change when the kids come. And I was like, no, like, it has to be resolved, and then we can have kids. Because I was like, I cannot co-parent with somebody where this is a situation. I do not want to co-parent with someone where, we end our relationship, and now I'm having to co-parent with somebody that is, that I have this toxic pattern with. I just couldn't do it, because I was thinking of like my ex-husband, and like, I'm really glad I'm not a co-parent with him, because that would not be good for that child. So anyway, this kind of culminated in there was finally like a moment where we were able to fully heal this, and we have not really had any serious fighting since, because we were able to completely eradicate our toxic patterns from our relationship, which and so what happened was, my husband said something to me that was very hurtful, and like really pushed like every button, every trigger. And we had been in a fight, and he said, you've been a failure for the last 10 years. And this just like even though it's just a sentence, it really, really like triggered me. And so for months and months, I was like, I'm leaving this relationship. Like, I was like very sure that I was leaving. And we kept talking about it and kept going. And like, he was not really saying anything. Like, he definitely apologized right away. And like, it wasn't that, he was not saying anything about his intentions and beliefs that was making me comfortable, basically. Because I was like, you can apologize for this, but you still meant it. And, so then we kept having that conversation, and eventually, we were able to heal it, but it took several months. But that one thing, after that point, after we had healed that one thing, I realized like, we are really done with this toxicity, because we had to talk like so much. I can't even tell you. And I had, like, I talk on here about the twin soul journey and doing like your core values list for your twin soul and for your life. And I had taken that list, and I'm a verbose person. So my list was like 10 pages long, like, not even kidding. So it was like, it was a very long list, and I had taken that and spoken to him over and over about it. Like, we had, kind of talked that document into the ground. I had gone through like a number of other, like, almost every week or so, I would sit down and write a letter to him. And like then I would go to his office at some point and read that letter out loud to him. And so we like really worked through everything. And as we did that, we eradicated this pattern. So the thing here is to really, it's really to understand that, so that for me was for our child, but you have to understand that in your twin soul journey, you are co-parenting essentially a union. You're co-parenting a union, you're co-parenting like a divine purpose. And there may be some toxicity between the two of you that needs to resolve before you can have that union, if that makes sense. And it really comes down to figuring out how to communicate with each other, going back to some of the tools that we have around the twin soul journey, and healing your wounding. Because like I would talk to my husband, but I also had to heal on my own, and he had to do the same. And he, you know, for me, my healing was I was just choosing not to accept certain behaviors anymore, and choosing to like work through my triggers around those behaviors. Like, why did those specific behaviors trigger me? Why did that specific set of words trigger me? And he also had to make those choices. He had to choose how he was going to act in our relationship moving forward, and I did too. So we both had to heal the patterns that we were having. So we were able to heal that, and then that opened the door to this co-parenting conversation in a more real way. Like before, we, you know, I knew I wanted to be a parent, but I wasn't like going to get pregnant because of this thing that was still, you know, in the back of my mind around our patterns. And then once I cleared those patterns, I was able to like really start to envision that for us and for myself. The third thing that I did was I had to fully surrender to God's purpose for parents and children. And so I use God here. God is my higher power. If you have a different higher power, that's fine. The universe, Mother Nature, spirit source, your creator, or even if you don't have that, even just yourself, like all that's fine. This is just the wording that I use. So don't let that stop you from absorbing the message. So I had to learn that God has a specific purpose for parents and children. It's a very specific and special relationship. And the way I learned about this relationship is that I had wasn't really a vision. It was like a claircognizance, or like some sort of experience is kind of the best way to explain it. But this experience was that I met two twin souls who are on the other side. And this is kind of it was like a very pivotal experience for me on this journey. So I met these two twin souls on the other side. I basically they had died here on Earth when I was very young when they died. I had never met them, but I knew who they were. Like they were like people who were here on Earth, and I knew exactly who they were, like right when they kind of came into my presence or came into my mind. And they had died on Earth, and they had basically chosen to die at the same time, but they had children from, while they were here on Earth. And I was kind of asking them, like, why did you choose to do this when you had these children that you were caregiving for? Like, why and how, and like, how is it okay? And so what they explained to me, they basically explained to me this parent-child relationship. So what it was is that at the soul level and at the 5D level, there's no hierarchy of souls. So souls are all, they're all peers effectively. And they all, so like, even if this is your child, at the 5D level, you and your child are on the same level, basically. there's no like you're a higher soul and they're a lower soul, or like you're an older soul and they're a newer soul, like none of that. So your peers with your child at the soul level. Now here on earth, you in the 3D, you are charged with taking care of that child, keeping them safe, keeping them from harm, keeping them from danger, and so on, like, and providing security for them, providing love to them. And you are in charge of that at the 3D level. So it's not to say like a baby can come into this world and be prepared for the world. So you're fully in charge of that. You must be the adult in that case. But what they were saying was basically that these relationships that they had with their children, and what eventually happened in this family, it was all chosen at the 5D level, and the children were like aware of it and kind of like they had like kind of signed off on it basically. And it was their choice as much as it was the parents' choice. And so they were really explaining this to me. They also explained that the whole situation had a divine purpose. And that was something that I didn't really understand. Like for a long time, I really thought like I want to be a mother. So, and I almost thought like, oh, I'm not becoming a mother, so God is like keeping this from me or punishing me over this. Like I really was like having this toxic relationship with the idea of having this child. And it was like, I was coming from like this very selfish perspective, or like at least like self-focused perspective of like, well, I want to be a mother. And like not thinking of like the child, not thinking of God, not understanding like the whole trinity of that, which is that, I'm a parent, this is the child, we've both chosen this, and we've both chosen each other at the 5D level, and then this is our higher power who has a larger purpose for this union basically. So it's pretty much the same thing with your twin soul. It's, and I'm talking about a child here, but it's really that you and your twin soul chose all of this. You guys figured it all out at the 5D. And in the 3D, there's a lot of illusion there, just like there was with me. I mean, I have a child now. We have a really strong relationship, but like his soul and my soul, like we've been communicating for much longer than he's been on this earth. And that was something that I had to understand, that it wasn't like, oh, like I've decided that I want to have a kid and now I'm going to have a kid. It was like, no, I have always been a mother. Like before I had a child, I was a mother because that's how I was designed to be. Like I was designed and preparing for this relationship with this child for my whole life. Because we had already decided it at the soul level, and because it's God's divine purpose for us. So I really had to take that like more global perspective and really see the other actors in this to kind of help broaden my understanding of it. And it was kind of at that point too that I realized like I'm a mother already. Because I think a lot of I really realized at least that I had to have a baby to be a mother. And that was when I kind of knew like I'm already a mother. I'm just separated from my child right now. And I think it's the same on the twin soul journey. It's like you have to understand like you are already like a wife or a husband to your twin. It just hasn't happened yet. Like you're just in a period of separation right now, but you have been that wife or husband for your whole life already. Like you already chose it. So it's kind of a cool understanding of it. So the fourth thing for me was that I had to realize and fully surrender to my baby's timeline and divine timing. And so what that what really happened, the thing that shifted this for me was I don't even know where I got this from, but I would say this to my husband: if we already knew our baby, and if our baby was telling us, hey guys, I just need more time before I can come into the world. Like, I've got to go take care of, whatever it was. But I need more time. Would we happily grant that time to our baby? And for me, it was just like a very obvious yes. Like, of course, like if I knew that my son needed more time to come into the world, like, of course, like he can have as much time as he needs. I'm not going to rush him. I'm not going to pressure him, And I realized that my baby was already there, right? Like he was already with me. Even though he wasn't physically with me yet. But I realized, like, man, he's like asking me this right now. And this is before I'm pregnant, before anything. It's like he's communicating with me, not through words, but through, kind of like his actions or his like lack of appearance, basically. But he's saying, like, hey mom, I need more time. Like, it's not time for me to come yet. And I realized, like, wow, this is really cool. Like, he's already like communicating with me, that, and like already like kind of asking me for something that is really like easy for me to grant him, and I didn't know it was a him at that time. I had no idea what gender. I guess I still don't, because my baby's only 6 months. I didn't know what gender he is yet. But I realized, like, wow, he's like, he needs more preparation time, and he is very sweetly asking me for this by not coming into the world. And like, man, I'm like really like genuinely happy to grant him that, because I love him already. So, and I'm getting a little emotional. But yeah, it was just this really like profound revelation for me. And the same is true for your twin soul. I know you're gonna like, you already know the same is true for your twin soul, because that's the point of this. But some of you might not like to hear that, but the same is true for your twin soul. It's really, if they're not there in your physical right now, it's because at the soul level, they're really communicating with you and telling you, kind of through the lack of presence, that, hey, hey, love, I really need more time before I come into the physical union with you. Would you grant me that? And, that is really, of course, the crux of unconditional love, which is that, like, if you truly love them, you would give them that time. And a lot of people I know are going to say, like, I wish that they would say that in person. But just like my baby couldn't communicate with us before he was on the planet. It's actually the same thing. It's like your twin soul, for whatever reason, cannot communicate that to you in words. They're communicating it to you at, like, in a different format. So like, they're just not present, like whatever the situation is. They blocked you on Facebook, like, who knows? Doesn't matter what the situation is. It's that they cannot, your job is to see through that illusion. They cannot communicate that to you in the way you want, but they are still communicating it to you. And they're communicating it to you at a 5D soul level. So the fifth and last thing, I had to fully surrender to the process of having a child in the 3D. So this was October 2018. My baby was born basically a year later, roundabout. And what was happening there is that And I didn't realize this until I had to confront it, but I was like very very fearful in the physical of having a baby, or even like starting the process of that. Like I didn't really go to doctors. I didn't want to go to the doctor. I was afraid of what they were going to tell me. I didn't want to do like, so you can do like what's called like a prenatal care package, where they help you, they do like tests and see like what's really going on there. They help you they do like this tube clearing thing to make sure there's nothing blocking your eggs, and like there's like this whole thing, and it's like a very like minor tests, minor procedures. But for me, I hadn't even had my blood drawn before, really, or like not in a very long time. And I was like very afraid of this physically, kind of, and like part of it was just afraid of the unknown. And then part of it is just like nobody is really, like most people are not that comfortable with getting their blood drawn. And so I was uncomfortable with getting my blood drawn, or uncomfortable with like, having an exam down there, like whatever it was. I was just like afraid. And so I had this very like physical 3D fear of what I wanted, and I had to clear all of that. And it really came down to so even though I had been trying to get pregnant for like 2 or 3 years already, I had never gone to a doctor and done fertility treatment. And I had been like, I had been for a long time like, I want to get pregnant naturally. Like, I don't want to mess with any of this. And then my husband just like I mean, he's like a very passionate, and like sometimes can be a little aggressive, but he was like, we need to go to the doctor. Like, he was like, I'm gonna book you an appointment if you won't book it yourself. Like, he was very like, do you want to do this or not? Like, get all in or get out. Like, he's got like kind of that just like a big energy, like a passionate energy. But he really gave me the push I needed. And he held my hand the whole entire time, like literally held my hand the whole entire time, because I was very squeamish about many aspects of it. So yeah, I had to take action in the 3D is really what it comes down to. I had to clear my fears around the action I needed to take in the 3D. And so that, a lot of my fears were like doing going to the appointments to begin with and getting like the testing done. What were they going to say? Like, what if I can't have children? And like, what, like I didn't want to hear the bad news. I wanted everything to be good. Then like, what if I have to do fertility treatment? Like, what, it was like this whole, like, it was almost like I was looking at the problem, or like not even the problem, but I was looking at the beginning and thinking through all the way to the end, to the worst case scenarios. Like, what if I'm on IVF, and what if it doesn't work, and what if I get sick, and blah, like just this whole long line of what ifs. And I had to really reel it back and be like, okay, what's the first step here? And that's what I need to, I just need to take this kind of one step at a time, and work through my fears as I go. And so I did that. And as I said, my baby was from the time that I finished that last step, my baby was born less than a year later. So pretty awesome. This is my journey. And I think the biggest thing I learned was that, really that if this is something that you want, you just need to keep clearing the separation that you are experiencing from it. And that was how I kind of shifted my thinking around my baby too. It was like, wow, this baby is already here. We are already connected. We're already destined for each other. All I have to do is clear the separation that is keeping us from coming into union, in the sense of like, I'm pregnant, which is what, I was considering the union, like the pregnancy and the birth. And it worked. So now I'm in union with my child, which is really cool. Really like one of the greatest blessings of my life. And I'm really proud of myself. And I think there's a lot of similarity to getting into union with your twin soul. So I hope that was helpful to you. Again, I have a second video that I'm doing that's called I Had Physical Proof of My Child, but Didn't Believe It Until I Surrendered This. And so I'm going to kind of continue my pregnancy story. Definitely more lessons. So if you want to get that, kind of part 2 of this video, it's of course going to be available on podcast and everything too. But definitely give that, go look for that out there. Hopefully it's kind of linked somewhere on this content. So I hope that was helpful to you. Thank you so much for spending your time with this. I know it's a long piece of content. I really appreciate you being in my community. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a beautiful and blessed day.